How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling. Got Brian Alvarez, Figure 4 Weekly, with us. And, of course, our special guest today will be Daryl Peterson, Max Payne, Man Mountain Rock. He's several different names. He'll be up in about a half an hour. We'll talk to him about the current scene, his career, and we'll catch up on all of the news. And there's no shortage of news today, of course. And certainly tons of emails that we'll try to get to as many as we can as well. Brian, how are you today?
I'm doing good.
That's good. You're still here.
I know, I'm still at the house.
Oh, man,
I was shocked at the number of people that believe that I was actually at your house.
Yes, but actually, this is what Brian is going to sound for the rest of our lives. He had a voice transplant over the weekend and actually during the week.
I got the box put in.
Yep.
In my throat.
I know, the cane box. For all that time, you know.
I have one of those when I got bored here.
What?
A voice changer.
Yeah.
Hey, this isn't the Howard Stern show.
Okay, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. I guess, let's see. SmackDown did a 4.9 rating, which is, actually considering what it was up against, it's pretty good. It was the last show after WrestleMania. They did the big angle on Monday. Not too surprising. Gene Okerlund and Bobby Heenan are at the Fan Fest as we speak in Houston, and they are going to be announcing the Gimmick Battle Royal, which is a big deal on the internet, but it has not been hyped on television. It's one of those things where, I saw like they had a poll of like the match you're most looking forward to at WrestleMania, and it was like first, and Rock and Austin was second, and it's like I think that's why like these polls mean nothing.
That's going to be a letdown to a lot of people too.
Well, the ring entrances will be the whole match, because if they go any length of time, I mean it's real battle royals with real wrestlers are really not.
Are usually horrible.
Yeah, they're usually horrible, and they usually have them at WrestleMania so guys get payoffs, and they're invariably the worst match on the whole show.
Mm-hmm.
So this one, I mean, Sheik and Volkov, I mean, we've seen those guys. Oh, my God.
Volkov I'm not so worried about, but the Iron Sheik. How long ago was that Here's a Wrestling show? That was like a year and a half ago, right?
Yeah, October.
I was afraid he wasn't going to make it out of that show.
He may never get out of the ring. And
he didn't have to take a bump over the top rope at that show either.
I don't think he's going to. Well, we'll see. We'll see how he does that. I don't know. Do not know. Let's see. The MLL pay-per-view is tonight with Perro Aguayo against Mascherano. Speaking of people who can't take bumps over the top rope, that match is going to Perro Aguayo against Universo dos Mil. And actually the undercard will probably be really good, and hopefully I'll have a tape of that one towards the latter part of this coming week. So that'll be cool. I'm going to start getting into more EMLL wrestling, actually starting this coming Tuesday. I'm going to use that extra time I got from not having to watch wrestling to start watching that. The Doink the Clown in the Battle Royal is going to be Gary Fall, who also was known as Ray Apollo, and I think those are the names he was, and also Doink the Clown. He was the second Doink, because Matt Osborne was the first one, and then Matt Osborne got into trouble, as he always does, and they had to get a new Doink. Let's see, what else do we have here? Shawn Michaels, I am presuming strongly, will not be at WrestleMania after all that build-up. I was last night kind of told that that's how things are planned, and as far as what, if any, long-term plans they have they have no long-term plans for Shawn Michaels now, I'm thinking, and I would be surprised to see him back at any time in the near future, but stranger things have happened. We'll try to find more out about that. And
man, what was he thinking at the time?
What, Shawn?
Yeah.
I don't get it. I mean, this just
First day back, everyone knows why he was gone. Just makes no sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you don't come to work not ready to work after they've kept him out for how long? They made him, like really eat it, for all this time, and they, bring him back at the last minute for the WrestleMania thing, and then he shows up Monday and Tuesday, and they are afraid to put him on the air, and it's just like, and this is like his last chance. I mean, like, that's the reason he hasn't been around for all this time. I mean, as a TV personality, everyone knows, the fans are going to pop for him. Everyone, likes him. They all respect that he was one of the greatest performers of all time. He's got kind of a legacy. And, what can I say? This one's his own fault, though.
Especially sad because he had all those, he was on the internet regularly, putting his columns up and doing the all, well, everyone writes these things about me, but the fact is I'm a changed man. Things are different now.
I'm a changed man. I have a wife and a kid.
Yep, wife and a kid, it changed me.
Yeah. One of those things about changed men I've noticed in wrestling is that, like, a lot of them just don't seem to change. Or if they change, they don't change for long.
They change back when they get in the arena.
That's the problem is sometimes they really do change when they get away from wrestling, but then as soon as you're back around the same people, you kind of end up doing the same things. I mean, I know some other people, it's the environment. I know another, without mentioning names, I just can recall another wrestler who, changed and did change for the same reasons. And then I heard some reports on him, and, he changed back too. Let's see. Mexican wrestling legend Rolando Vera passed away last night of a heart attack at the age of 71. I don't know a lot about him. I don't think that he ever wrestled in the United States. He may have, but I'm not. I know when I was, of course, he was done in wrestling by the late 60s, so I would have never seen him, and I wouldn't even known. But I don't remember him ever wrestling in Texas or California, where a lot of the Mexican stars did wrestle. But he was NWA World Middleweight Champion from 1956 to 1960. And let me see, what other stuff do we got? AAA's doing King of Kings tonight as well. Let's see, what else? What do you think of SmackDown last night?
I think the strangest thing of the whole SmackDown show was the fact that they did the Rock Austin angle in the middle of the show, and they had both guys arrested or whatever, taken away by security.
Too many cops last night. I was so sick of cops. I wanted to shoot those cops.
Oh yeah, I know. And it was so dumb because you do an angle the week before where the cops are fake, and then the next week the cops are supposed to be real, and it's like, why did Undertaker believe that the cops were real this week when they went to handcuff him? I guess he didn't because he beat him up, but and then the whole thing, the arrestings are so dumb.
It's like he got arrested for filing a restraining order, right?
But then not for attacking policemen.
But then he beats up all these cops, and then, Helmsley doesn't get arrested for, smashing up a limousine with a sledgehammer. I mean, not a limousine. I mean, the bike with a sledgehammer. And it's like the whole thing is just too, the cop thing is just too.
It just doesn't make any sense.
It's too much suspension of disbelief that makes no sense. Yeah, it's like if you're going to have police arrest people during wrestling shows, then you can't do things, overtly that when cops are on hand looking at you, like the cops are like holding Undertaker, and then Hunter sucker punches him right in front of the cops, and he's not arrested. I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
Especially the whole thing with Undertaker coming out and he says, I talked to a lawyer, and I talked to a bail bond guy or whatever, and I will be out of jail in 12 hours. And this is before he even got arrested. Then he caused all this havoc, and we're supposed to believe that he talked to his lawyer and explained he was going to beat up cops and all this, or, how does it work? If you tell the bail bond guy that you're going to go kill somebody in advance, and he says he'll get you out in 12 hours, and you go kill a guy, do you get out in 12 hours?
Well, yeah. Even if you have repeated arrests on a weekly basis every Monday night, there's a pattern here.
It was just lame. And then they arrest them, and it's like you kind of expect. Well, they've been arrested in the middle of the show. They'll come back at the end of the show for the big angle, and big angle did not end up involving them at all. They were gone, and Steve Regal's music played at the end of the show before the music video. Just thought that was kind of weird.
No. You missed the end of the show, Brian. The end of the show was Steve Austin.
Oh, with Austin. Yeah, I guess you're right. Sorry.
Okay, so you did see that, yeah. Okay. But there's no other angle, yeah. I didn't think for a final show going into WrestleMania, I didn't think it was a good show at all.
No. I think they expected the music video was going to be the big hype for the show, but I fast-forwarded through it.
Yeah. There was, I don't remember. The Hunter Undertaker thing at the very beginning, I was really, I don't know, I was bored during the opening angle. And, I thought Benoit did a good job, when they got the ankle lock on him, when Angle put the ankle lock on Benoit. And the way he tapped and sold it, I thought that was, very professional and the right way to do it. That was good. And then the rest, I don't know, just, I
think there was just something about that opening promo. It was one of those promos where they just talk for 20 minutes and say absolutely nothing. Which actually has been a lot of them lately, but this one in particular, it was like, Hunter, he was out there for 15 minutes, and the gist of what he was saying was, I'm going to beat The Undertaker. And then Undertaker comes out and talks for 10 more minutes, and all he said was, no, you're not. And that was it.
They should have done it in 2 minutes.
Can't we have a little something, a little more meat in that interview?
And the other thing, it just seemed like watching the show, that it was like last week's SmackDown, where you just feel like you're watching forever, and there's no wrestling, and even Raw on Monday. The last couple of shows, you're watching forever, and then you start thinking, I'm actually seeing absolutely no wrestling on this wrestling show.
Mm-hmm.
Just like these long segments, without actually anything going on in the ring, or when it does go on in the ring, it's like, the match goes on, and the match takes like a minute and a half to do the match.
Yeah, let's see, they had 5 matches last night. Ivory and Trish was real short. Rhino and Matt Hardy was short.
Yeah,
and,
real short.
Yeah.
The APA match, that thing was over right away.
One of the things on the shows that's been annoying me lately is the fact that they do all the... I don't mind so much a replay on SmackDown of something that happened on Raw, but sometimes they'll do a replay on SmackDown of something that happened in, like, the first hour of SmackDown. Like, maybe somebody missed that hour, and it seems like just a waste of time. It doesn't bother me so much because I fast forward, but I'm just thinking of these people that are watching it live and just having to sit through all this nothing.
I watched it live, and I think that, and usually I tape SmackDown and watch it later, and often watch SmackDown in well under an hour and a half because of fast forward. But I decided to watch it live last night, and it was a lot slower moving to me than before. And all those replays, it was like, God, there's so many chances to just go up. I kept getting that feeling of, I just go upstairs and check my emails. You know what I mean? And then by the time I come down, the next match is already over. It's like, oh God. Anyway, I didn't think it was a good show, and certainly not, for the last show before Mania. I wasn't really any more hyped. In fact, I would say I ended the show. This is not good. I ended the show less excited about Mania than when I started the show. That's not a good idea. I was a little bit excited about Austin and Rock, but I've been all, I would say the hype for Austin and Rock has not gotten me more excited than I was 4 months ago when I knew it was going to be the main event. I was probably maybe even slightly more excited then. They did a good job. I think they've done a good job far too late for the Benoit Angle match, but what they've done has been good. Undertaker and Triple H, I was watching that stuff last night, and it was like, their angles, Undertaker got to beat up Triple H a little bit, then Triple H got heat back. It was psychologically sound build-up, but I don't know what. It just didn't really work for me. Maybe because it was the interview dragged on so long.
It's just a long interview, and, during the first interview, they really didn't have anything an issue between the two of them. They just didn't like each other. And then the issue ended up being over a motorcycle. And I wasn't particularly excited to see the match anyway, and that added absolutely nothing to it for me.
But anyway, we will be on at midnight Eastern Time right after WrestleMania, the biggest show of the year. 4-hour show, then we'll be doing a 1-hour post-game wrap-up, Brian and myself here on Yada.com. I'm sure everyone knows that, but we're going to mention it at least 3 or 4 more times in the next 2 hours. Let's see. This is our poll question for today. If you were Bill Goldberg, would you, A, negotiate a buyout and sign with WWF, or B, sit and collect your money from Time Warner? Actually, until you know the numbers, it's probably an unfair question, but the way the numbers look out, I think we know the answer on that one. This is the poll question for yesterday. How will the cancellation of WCW on television affect the time you spend watching wrestling? A, we'll spend more time watching WWF, 13%. B, we'll spend more time watching independent wrestling, 3%. That was not a good sign. C, we'll spend more time watching international wrestling, 10%. D, we'll spend less time watching wrestling, 33%. And then stopped watching WCW a long time ago, so it will have no effect, 42%. Now, that makes no sense because we have far more than 42% of our listenership, usually say that they watch Nitro, except in the last 3 or 4 weeks. Not last week's show. Last week's show did pretty well. Let me see. What else? Actually, any other main news? That's kind of the main news here.
That's about it.
All right. We could start hitting emails here.
I would like to plug a show tonight, by the way, at Edmonds Community College. I'm going to be wrestling on it. And it's a startup group. And I don't want to get this wrong because these people would kill me, but I believe that the people that are helping put it together are the same people that promote the Pancration shows that Josh Barnett works on. So
Matt Hume?
Show up, or they will beat you up.
So is it Matt Hume people?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like I said, I don't want to say for certain because they would kill me, but
they'll break your ankles, that's for sure. Speaking of which, we got to get Josh Barnett on this show.
I am
he
working.
may be there tonight, so I can ask him.
Yeah, Al, let's get Josh Barnett on the show.
Let's do that, but if Brian's going to be at the show,
Brian, if you see him, tell him that we're gonna, because when I saw him at UFC, I said, we're gonna put him on the show, and then he hasn't been on, so we should do that. What else do we have here? I'll start with some emails here. Oh, also, I'm going to make mention that I'm going to be on with Mark Madden at right after this show is over, actually, on ESPN1250.com. So it's ESPN Radio with Mark Madden. We'll be talking about wrestling, believe it or not. And I'm also going to be on with Larry Cutler in St. Louis tonight at 11, the Central Time.
Hey, why don't you bring up to Mark the Jim Cornette hypothetical question story?
About the canoe?
About? Yes, about the canoe. And he said, remember he said, Mark Madden, oh, you need a steamship for him.
Yeah. And I'm doing what show? Al, tomorrow morning I'm doing Howard Bloom. Now, what is that? ESPN Radio?
No, it's not ESPN Radio. It's radio up in Canada. Give me a minute. When we come back from a break, I'll have that info for you.
Okay. I'm just running crazy here. Anyway, let's start with some of the emails. Let's see. We got. Can you tell me? It's from Hector Veloz, who goes. Can you tell me what's the best mixed martial arts event on video? I would say the Pride Grand Prix from May the 1st of last year. If I had to pick one show and say that was the best show with the Hoist Gracie, Kazushi Sakuraba 90-minute match, that would be my pick. That was that tournament and everything. That was an awesome show. Let's see. Ron Schneller says, is it true that WCW had Bobby Eaton show for other wrestlers to and from various facilities during the Disney World worldwide tapings in a golf cart? I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know why that'd be surprising.
Yeah. Let's see. My own take on this rush to start up a second promotion is relax. What's the rush? Why not sit back, take a deep breath, see where McMahon is going, see what he isn't offering, then proceed to build your promotion around that void. Hey, no one's rushing. We're not going to have believe me, we're not having a second national promotion next week. Don't kid yourself, no matter what you hear. I'll tell you one thing, though. There are too many people out there wanting to establish themselves as number two. This is counterproductive to the cause. I say that anyone with any intention of forming a startup should see if they can all work together for a common cause. Jerry Jarrett, J.J. Dillon, Dusty Rhodes, Eric Bischoff. It ain't going to happen. Everybody wants to be a chief. Nobody wants to be an Indian. Well, nobody's going to be anything if all these wannabes go at it alone. Okay. What else here? I was watching Hardys and Lita on Off the Record. Listening to them talk about all the bumps they've taken and how much they worked during the past year got me thinking, wouldn't they, along with The Rock, be the right ones to send to WCW? That way they can get some rest on their bodies and give WCW a real good tag team to start. Of course, I'd like to see them team Kidman and Shane Helms and do a feud with the Hardys. Hey, that's a good idea. We talked about the Hardys. That actually makes sense. It gives Jeff a rest. Lita's kind of a big star right now. Rock would be good. These are all good ideas. Do you know exactly what happened with Shawn?
And you know what's going to happen in the end is going to be Billy Gunn.
I know. And then it's just going to be death. Let's see. Do you know what happened with Shawn at SmackDown? I think he fell asleep or something. I don't know. He just wasn't whatever it was, he was not in condition to perform, and they didn't let him perform, and he was not happy, and that's the deal. This is from Trent Walters, who goes, I would prefer, this is actually a good letter, too. He goes, I prefer a 90-minute time slot for WCW. The late-night audience does not grow. That's right. From 11 to 1, like traditional wrestling audience, you're on 8 to 10, 9 to 11. The idea is that you grow every quarter hour, which hadn't seemed to happen for Thunder a lot lately, and really not even for Nitro, but theoretically, even some of the Raws haven't done that lately. But generally speaking, that's what happens. The late-night audience doesn't grow, so building up a main event in the final 30 minutes will be counterproductive. That's a great point. If you're doing that, you got to pretty much have the main event on very early in the show, if you're booking that kind of a show. And the problem with that is if you're doing a 2-hour TV taping...
What show used to do that? Wasn't it like the old Saturday Night main events?
Saturday Night main event always did the main events like they put the main event on first or second, right?
Yeah.
I think usually second. And they always say
that was for an hour show. If you put a main event on first and then go another hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes after that, it's gonna be bad news.
It's gonna be tough. Well, think about also the live crowd. Okay, you put the main event on early, and then you've got this live crowd that's already seen the main event, and then you want them to stick around for another hour. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but something you could do there is just do something simple like put on the TV main event first, and then
and then the dark match main event.
You think shoot an angle before the taping to lead to the off TV main event. And that way the people would have, something built up for that main event to stay for. But, TV audience would know nothing about it.
Now, here's another one also. What do you think about the idea of bringing, say, like The Rock and Triple H or big names to the Wednesday television tapings? They don't appear on the show itself, but they're the main event in a dark match, so at least, you have something that will draw a crowd. Because right now they don't have anything that will draw a crowd, obviously, because they haven't drawn any crowds.
I think that'd be good, like, at the beginning, just because they need something to build it up. But down the road, I mean, if they really want to build it up and it gets to the point where it's drawing at least somewhat of a rating and they can do some pay-per-views, I think if they want to keep it separate, they need to get those guys out of there until they're ready for the interpromotional deal. At the beginning, though, I think it'd be awesome, though.
Well, I think at the beginning you kind of have to, but we'll see. I mean, we'll find out anyway. Because I think that building something in the final 30 minutes will be counterproductive because a lot of the audience will have tuned out. As well, I would rather see 90 minutes of good, solid work and writing than have them try to fill 2 hours. 2 hours to lose the product. Finally, the reason Vince wouldn't give, or TNN wouldn't give Vince a great time slot for the show is twofold. Number one, the XFL hasn't met the numbers Vince promised, so why should TNN believe that the WCW will? Actually, the
because
WCW
it's different in football and wrestling.
Yeah, it is his field of expertise, and football clearly is not. And number two, TNN executives think that TNN is more successful now due to the WF programming, not due to the WF programming, but due to the We've Got Pop brilliant marketing that is the envy of TV stations around the world. Yeah, if you took those numbers for Raw out of the TNN and just averaged the other 6 nights in prime time, I bet it wouldn't be all that much different than it was last season. I think that the only difference is that they got that 4.7 to 5.3 or 4 every Monday night, which takes their 0.7 average up to like a 1.1 for the week. Mm-hmm. I bet that's like almost all of the gain. You hear that Gilbert's going to be in the Battle Royal.
Oh, another big name.
Yeah, I tell you, that if they do not have some sort of a deal with Bill Goldberg, putting Gilbert in the Battle Royal is really stupid. I mean, they're building something up. This is something that WF has never ever done in its history, is build up something in the fans' eyes that they want to see more than what they're presenting, that they're not going to deliver. And they've never done. I mean, that's one of the things that I've always admired about Vince McMahon as a promoter, is the fact that he doesn't waste time swerving people on something he ain't going to follow up on, generally speaking. And I don't,
That's kind of been the whole thing with Gilbert from the beginning, though.
Well, no, but at the beginning it was
dumb from day one.
No, but I mean the whole thing of why he did it before was it was like a spoof on WCW. Mm-hmm. So now he's spoofing this guy who everyone thinks he's got now because they've been reading that he bought the company. That means he bought Goldberg, except he didn't. People don't know he didn't. So he's like, all it's going to do is get people to chant Goldberg, wait for the Goldberg run-in. I mean, when that guy comes out, everyone in that building is going to think Goldberg's going to come out and spear him. And spear everyone in the Battle Royal, and then they're going to get this horrible Battle Royal, and it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
I don't think, unless he does, unless they sign him.
Another thing, it's nowhere near the level of Goldberg, but it was in Jeff Merrick's SmackDown report last night. I didn't even think about this, but the fact that they showed a replay of Vince firing Jeff Jarrett, it's almost like building up that Jeff Jarrett's going to show up with Shane.
Oh, everyone's going to think that Jeff Jarrett's going to show up. I know. Very strange. Well, we'll find out.
Maybe he just figures who cares what they expect because they're going to get something.
Maybe he just thinks, hey, I own it all, and it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, they may not get Jarrett, but they'll get Booker T, so they'll be happy.
Yeah. That's not a definite that Booker T's going to be there, although I would...
I'm talking long term.
Well, but yeah. Well, Booker T's going to be on May 12th on TNN, that's for sure. If that's the start date, which it probably will be. What was the thing about all that? All of the wrestlers, the 24 wrestlers whose contracts were purchased by the WWF, I think they got notice Wednesday, I think it was. And they were told to fill out some form and send it. And when all of those things get back to the WWF office and everyone signed it, I think the WWF will then announce that we've signed these 24 guys and we'll get the actual list. The only name that I heard got a form that we didn't know before, which I figured, but I didn't know for sure, was Alan Funk, who's Kiwi. So it's all the lower paid guys. If Booker T has made a deal, I think he may be the only one as far as the big. Well, I'm sure he's the only one if he has of the big names. All of the ones that I've spoken with, none of them have even been approached, let alone made a deal. Most of the wrestlers have not. The other wrestlers, as best I can tell, have not been approached. Have you heard of anyone being approached besides those 24 guys?
No, that's it.
Okay. So that's where everything stands. Jim Ross on the Ross Report made mention of, that they may have agents announced, and everyone assumes that that's Arn Anderson and Fit Finley. So it looks like they will probably be getting jobs. As far as announcers and all that, it's all subject to who knows yet. Let me see. This is where's Shawn Michaels been? He's been home. I thought he retired due to severe back injuries. Yes, he did. I hear talk of him coming back. Will he be commissioner again? Well, if he was, he's not going to be now. He's by far one of the greats. But the height of his fame came several years before the WWF became what it is now, which is unfortunate because had he stayed, he might have been able to reap some of the same kind of rewards Rock and Stone Cold have in today's media. You know what? He'd have self-destructed. I hate to say this, but if they had put him out there in the media, in the position that Rock is in, he would have been an embarrassment to the company. And that's why Rock and Austin are in the position they're in. Let's see, more ideas. I'd like to share with you my ideas for possible direction of the new promotion. I think Paul Heyman should be made in charge of booking. Could happen, but unlikely. He should take all the former ECW talent along with him. Not going to happen. That would include Rhino and Justin Credible, also include Saturn and Raven. In a sense, they could resurrect ECW with an all-star lineup within the WCW time slot. Those days are over. It's over. ECW is done. Okay?
If that ECW crew could have turned things around, then they would have done it on TNN the first time, in a better time slot.
Yeah. The more I think about this idea, the better it sounds. Doing so would turn the late 11 o'clock time slot into an advantage, as ECW has always been more associated with and oriented toward the more adult audience. There's some truth to that. The plan would also differentiate between the two products in a way that would give the casual fan a reason to watch both shows. Otherwise, I don't see how they would avoid the stigma of the other show becoming just a B show that nobody would ever want to watch, let alone purchase their pay-per-views. Okay. Okay, we got Max Payne on. Let me just go through. Let's see. How far do you think Brock Lesnar is from TV? I just looked at his picture, and he is a monster. Well, he said himself that he didn't want to be out there for, what did he say, at least 8 months to a year, right?
Yeah, he said 6 to 8 months.
Yeah. Okay, let me just go through this really quick. Anyway, we'll go through some of these as the show goes on. Max Payne, Daryl Peterson, how you doing today?
Best day ever.
Good.
And then some.
Well, I guess we should talk a little bit about your background for newer fans. You actually started as a wrestler. Was it Iowa or Iowa State?
Actually, I started with a junior college called North Idaho Junior College back in, I believe it was 80. And was there for 2 years and then went to Iowa State, for 3 years.
Did you set some sort of records, like break a Chris Taylor record?
I did, man. That's funny you should ask that, yeah. It's called an unofficial, NCAA record, but they still give me a trophy and, a plaque or something. And actually, Chris Taylor had an NCAA pin, the record of 4 pins in 13 minutes and 30 seconds or something like that. And my record was actually 5 pins in 5 minutes and 32 seconds.
Is that in the tournament?
That was in the national tournament.
In the national tournament, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And what did you place? Well, you placed second.
I placed fifth that year, but it's easy to say when you didn't win it. When you hear what I got to say about that, but I was actually more happier taking fifth because I got to beat some people that I hadn't beaten, my whole career at Iowa State, and so I just had the tournament of a lifetime, and it was just, it was great to beat like this guy from Oklahoma State by the name of Kalen O'Hara. And I stuck him in 32 seconds in the national tournament. It was, it's one of those things where all of a sudden, all the other losses I'd had to him seemed irrelevant. And he, in fact, I remember him cussing me as I was pinning him. He's going, "You son of a bitch." He says, "I beat you all year long and you beat me now." So that was fun. That was a great moment.
Now, after that, your pro wrestling, now, did you first get contacted by New Japan? Is that how you got into pro wrestling?
No, actually the way I got into pro was, I really didn't go to LA. I mean, I've got an article I'm going to try and put on my website, but, I just never believed I'd be a pro wrestler. I hated it in college because I was so, pissed off that every time I'd go through an airport and I'd tell somebody I was a wrestler, they'd go, "Oh, we watch you on TV all the time." I said, "You've never watched me on TV, all right? You've never watched what I do on television." You know, because they would go, "Huh? Don't, you're scaring me." But, you know, as an amateur wrestler, you know, nobody watches amateur wrestling on television. You know, it's just one of those things that, not nobody, but the people that are, you know, hardcore fans like myself. I mean, I'd stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning to watch, you know.
Oh, watch ESPN too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I'll do that sometimes when I'm coming home from the studio and, all right, cool, wrestling. But nobody else watches it, you know. So they always would mistake us for whenever we would say wrestling, they'd say pro wrestling. And, you know, there was that huge stigma attached to that, you know. And so I would never confess to that.
So anyway, how did you first get hooked up with pro wrestling?
So then anyway, I moved out to LA and was looking for a job, like a real job, because I wanted to go out there and be an actor. That was really what I set forth to do in college, was be an actor and work in television and film. So I moved to LA to sort of seek, you know, fame and fortune and do all that. And my first job was as a security guard in Los Angeles. And you know, when you're a country kid from, even though I'd been to college, you know, Iowa State's, you know, right in the middle. Ames is a small town when school's not in session, you know. And so I just basically lived in the country. You move to LA and all of a sudden you're a security guard. Well, my first gig there was as a security guard at a punk rock concert at the Olympic Auditorium in downtown. So I'm like scared to death doing that. And then the next gig I had was working at the Palladium for Tate, Tillman, and Gonzalez. And it just so happened that the owner of the security company had heard I was a wrestler, and when you know, the guy was an Iowa State alumni. And he said, "Hey, I know this guy named Red Bastine. He's a pro wrestling trainer, and you know, have you ever thought about that?" And, you know, I was at a point where in LA where I was, you know, ready to go home because I'd been there long enough and my family was suffering enough that I thought, you know, I better go home and get my life back together. And I met Red Bastine that afternoon, and the rest is kind of history. You know, from that point forward, I went into his camp. At the time, he tried to get me to the camp that Sting and all the other guys were in, but it was a little too late. So I waited and went through the next camp after that. And one time, you know, towards the end of the camp, Red said, you know, "Would you be interested in going to Japan?" I said, at that point, after I tried it, I fell in love with it, you know, because it just fit my personality so well to be able to, you know, do a character and manifest all these things. I said, yeah, I'd love to do it. And the Japanese showed up to one of my practices and saw me and signed contracts, and the rest is history.
So you went over and basically started. Now, did you start your career in Japan with the Brian Adams and Chris Benoit?
Let's clarify that, though. I started my career in Japan with Chris Benoit. Brian came on later, and his lazy butt, he didn't do any of the hard stuff. He came on, got out on the easy part. Chris and I had already worked there for 9 months and lived in the dojo and got beat up every day. And Brian, being the lucky kind of guy that he is, just happened to fall, you know, right into the best place and position he could fall in Japan. But Chris and I had actually been there since, you know, like August, just working our guts out, living in the dojo.
Brian Adams was lazy?
Oh, my God.
How can that be?
I know that's hard for you to believe. I know this may be a revelation, but Brian...
Now, when you were over there, that was a weird time in the business in Japan anyway, because there's that whole...
Inoki and Baba I don't think they just split, but...
They had been split.
Yeah, they had been split for a while, but Inoki, it's really weird when you know, especially, you got to understand, I didn't grow up a mark. You know, I didn't grow up with the business at all. You know, I loved it when I was a kid. I used to watch Rocky Mountain Wrestling when I was a kid and couldn't wait to see it, and then by 10:30 at night was sound asleep, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I used to wait to watch that, but I wasn't into the wrestling business. I was so devoted to the amateur wrestling business that, you know, I didn't have a background. I didn't know what New Japan was, or, you know, I didn't know anything about Inoki. In fact, I just, you know, realized about Inoki when I got there, you know, that he was the one that had fought Ali. And
what's it like? Okay, you have this idea, and of course, now a fan now seeing someone like The Rock or Steve Austin or someone would kind of have an idea of what Inoki was. But in that day, I mean, there was nobody in the United States that was like Inoki over there. I mean, it's like
no way. I would be surprised even today.
No, today it's not, but at least like with The Rock, there's a. If I say like Inoki's is bigger than The Rock, they can at least kind of
relate
in their minds.
Yeah.
I
guess you probably at least equivocal. I mean, The Rock's pretty over, man, isn't he?
Yeah, right. But like,
so,
like
before,
at
least on the plane for sure.
Yeah,
but even then, the Japanese culture is different enough that they look at things a little differently. So once you take that into perspective of the whole thing, you realize the kind of a different. It's a little different mentality there.
Yeah, because I used to tell people like Inoki was super over, and they would say Dusty Rhodes or Bruno Sammartino, and I go, you don't understand what I'm saying.
Oh my God, no, you don't have a. Well, that's what that's a classic example of what I'm talking about. I remember this one night, truly one of those nights to remember in Japan. I have to say, we went out, and a lot of times they would just come and get us, and just say Pita. Sakaguchi would come in and go Pita, and he would just with a hand signal, say, come here, and we'd know, okay, I guess we're going somewhere, So we'd go with him, and a lot of times it would be to these incredible places to eat and do all kinds of stuff. And so this particular evening, he came and got myself, and this evening, Brian Adams was with us, and we went to this party, and they fed us it's just really immaculate. It's a sit-down, really traditional Japanese dinner with everybody around the table. And, they realized rather quickly that we didn't like the cuisine of Japan, which is the little obentos and so on and so forth. And they said, what do you like? And we said, chicken, shrimp, So they bring out these huge plates of chicken and shrimp and just are feeding us like crazy. And then we started drinking, and pretty soon it's just this huge party, and all of a sudden the host of the party is just drunk enough that he stands up and he gets really physical. Japanese get really physical when they talk. Chotamate, and he stands up and demands that everybody pay attention because he has something to say, and he tells everybody, and then he taps his glass again. And this very nice dressed up kabuki woman walks in with this huge. Silver domed, like a serving tray thing, with envelopes in them. And he talks about everybody around the table, including us. And she walks around, and every envelope is labeled with names on them. And I can see what they give everybody, and they bring it to us. And I had no idea what it was. I thought it was a card, or something. I had no idea, but I just watched what everybody else did, and they just put it in their pocket and didn't say nothing, right? So we get home. And I open it, and it's 300,000 yen. It's like, I don't know, I think that's like $300 or something. Sounds like $1 billion. It's like $300 or $400. And I remember seeing the size of Inoki's envelope, and the lip of the envelope wouldn't touch, So they would they would give presents out that were just immense to this guy, just because of who he was and who he'd been with, and it went around the table like that. And I've never seen that happen in America. So I don't know.
There's a lot of things different over there than here.
Absolutely.
We were talking earlier, and it's a really professional wrestling is a very strange business, very unique business, and the fame and just the lifestyle is very addictive, which is one of the reasons why so many times when guys get older, they say they're going to retire, and then they never do, and then they keep coming back. And you were mentioning that, your retirement was kind of forced on you in that you just stopped getting booked. And you were talking about, that was a real tough blow.
I don't think, I think it's pretty easy for anybody to understand what it feels like when you think, you're a part of something and have that whole thing turn its back on you. At least you feel that way. You know what I mean? Your perception's that way. I think no matter who you are, it's gonna smack you around pretty hard. Especially when you devoted 11 years of your life to trying to be better at it and do things that maybe nobody else had tried to do before. And so it was really hard on me when the business went away. I laid around for 6 months, really confused, partly because I personally was so addicted to painkillers and Valiums and everything else that, it was all at once, one kind of thing too. It was cold turkey all at once, and it was difficult. And then it sort of went away, and I actually made the mistake of trying to go back into the business for 3 months. I went back to Europe, and I walked out in the middle of it because I couldn't take it no more. I couldn't go back to the lifestyle, and for me, it didn't work. And I realized at that time I was done. I really said, that's it. You accomplished what you wanted to accomplish, which was allow yourself an opportunity to go on to something else that was more career-oriented. You're not going to be, 25 the rest of your life. Somehow I saw the sun shine through all that. And I think the way I found the sunshine was through my family. They just never gave up on me and was there with me through thick and thin. And that's how I made it through. But it was tough. It was as tough as any addiction that you could ever imagine to try and kick.
It's a weird thing because now, based on what you told me earlier, it was probably the best thing that ever happened in your life. But when it happened, it was at that moment probably the worst thing, right?
It was crushing, man. You just, especially when, I really tried very hard. And I really don't know. I don't know what I did wrong. To this day, I wished I had an answer. I wished I could say to you, because I made some mistakes. There's no question about it. I would never sit here and, deny that I was a retard. I made all kinds of mistakes that anybody does going to the show for the first time, I think. I think everybody, not necessarily everybody, but, there's been a lot of people that have done that. And I stepped back and said, okay, what do I got to do to change? But for some reason, I didn't get a second chance at all. I could never get anybody to return a phone call and tell me what was going on. And so by that time, I wasn't necessarily bitter. I was just turned off. And honestly, by that point in time, my focus of direction, by the time I'd moved back from Atlanta and moved home and sort of already started, the discharge from the business, I guess it was already sort of laid down that I was going to quit and go away.
And when you walked away, was it like you didn't talk to anybody anymore? Did you just
I have a couple
no
of
desire
friends.
For independent bookings or anything like that?
No, I didn't consider anything. I wouldn't. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't. I just took my boots off because the reality of it is, I told Vince from the very beginning that I wasn't a wrestler. I really didn't want to be a wrestler in the WWF. I really wanted to be a talent. I really wanted to be somebody that, that was an idea guy and brought forth, things to the business that were outside the ring. Because I honestly never felt I was a very good wrestler. I loved the business. I loved the premise of the business and the fundamental, part of the business that's the sort of classic theater mentality. If you scrape away all the stuff down underneath all of the exterior parts of the business is this beautiful nugget of Greek tragedy. That was the part I really dug. But actually being in the ring was not the part that I felt was my best asset. I wanted to be a musician in the WWF and a character like Jesse, who interviewed and, brought special segments and the boys could do videos with, and it was just kind of that guy, But for some reason I could never get through, to the office, especially to Vince, that's what I wanted to do. And for some reason, I don't know if Vince and I just didn't hit it off from the beginning or what. I thought we did. Like I said, to this day, the hard part for me is I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what happened.
Did you talk to him about, working behind the scenes with the music, or was it more like...
from the beginning.
Uh-huh.
From the beginning, producing things and, producing videos.
Was there ever a talk, because I don't know if that was with you, but I remember there was talk at one point that they would actually have like a WWF band, which would be like wrestlers.
Yeah.
And I think that for whatever reason it never. Were you involved in that and then it never got going for some reason?
No, well, let's. Is that the line of direction of questioning you want to go in? Because that's a long story. That starts way back in WCW days with Brian, and that goes way, way back. So, I mean, if you want to head down that road, well, let's head down.
Yeah, sure, let's go.
Well, like I said, I from the day, it's really funny. Let me just start this whole thing out with the interesting thing about what I always found was a problem was no matter what promoter I put my gimmick in front of them, they all told me no, I couldn't do it. Even Vince. And I never understood that. I never understood why they couldn't just let me be me. They always wanted to control some part of it. The Japanese told me no, I couldn't be Max Payne. And I said, well, I'm going to be Max Payne. That's my character. That's what and they said, no, you're not going to be Max Payne. I come home to Memphis. I take that back. Let me give Lawler enough credit here. Because Lawler took it way over the edge and took it into a darkness that, in some ways, I really enjoyed it. I didn't like the Satan ties, but I at least enjoyed the darkness side of it. You know what I mean? But every promoter I ever worked with, told me, no, I couldn't do that. And, I always wanted to be a musician, and somehow it struck me when I was in Japan that was sort of the liaison. A heavy metal wrestler that actually came to the ring playing and then did music and, all this other stuff on the side. And so I just started working on that. I always wanted to play the guitar. It gave me good reason to carry a guitar around with me and practice all the time. It gave me good reason to really be the gimmick that I wanted to be. But at Memphis time, shortly after Japan, I still, I wasn't ready yet. I still hadn't practiced and had felt comfortable enough about it. And so then I went to Europe. I did my own little wrestling organization for a while, went to Europe, and midway through Europe, this thing was just dwelling on me so hard. I actually met a record executive at the time, too, who was an American living in Germany. And I told him I wanted to do this, and he said, well, then there's only one thing for you to do. Just go home and work your guts out between the tours. I was in Germany for 2 seasons with Otto Wanz. So I came home. It was right after Metallica's Black album had came out. And I came home, and I just practiced like 20 hours a day for 5 months nonstop. Just everything I could think of. And I went back to Europe, and Otto would not let me do this gimmick.
Oh, I could bet.
He told me I was such an idiot. He actually called me an idiot. And finally we got to Hanover, and Peter Williams said to me, he said, I went to him and I said, Peter, let me try. Let me just try it. What do we got to lose? Let's try this, because, God, in Hanover there were 13 people there on a Monday night, So I'm like, what do we got to lose? If we run these 12 offs, 6 more drunks will show up abstractly just for no reason, So, anyway, I talked him into it, and he was much more theatrical oriented in terms of his wrestling program. He controlled Hanover. Otto had nothing to do with Hanover. And I was practicing one day. Fit Finley, man, God bless Fit Finley. Fit, if you're listening and you hear this, please send me an email, because I love Fit Finley. God, he is such a stud. I was playing, and Tony St. Clair walked in. He said, I am begging you to shut that shit off. And I'm going, what? He goes, that sucks. Don't do that. And I said, well, I'm doing it, Tony. And he walked out all disgusted. And when he walked out the door, Fit goes, can I say anything or what?
Yeah.
I can say the F word?
Sure.
Or do you prefer not to have that on the air?
I would prefer not to. But
okay,
then do it if you want to. I won't stop you. You're too big for me.
No, I'm not going to. No, because I would rather not cuss. But you get the drift. He basically said, Max, just don't worry about Tony. He can go blank himself, on Main Street, and just keep doing your gimmick. And so I did the gimmick, and the first night I did it, there was 20 people there. And then they advertised it. The next time I did it, there was 80 people there. The next time I did it, there was 200 people there.
It's better than the XFL now.
Yeah. So by the end of the whole thing, we were packing the tent in Hanover. It was truly unbelievable. Dave Taylor and Lord Stephen turned me babyface. I was a heel up till then, completely a heel. But then I started playing every night and doing this playing thing, and the crowd just ate it up, and I became Heavy Metal Buffalo when they turned me babyface, and we sold out all the
Heavy Metal Buffalo.
Oh yeah, isn't that ridiculous? Yeah, exactly. They actually wanted me to do that in the WWF, and I said to who was it? It was
Heavy Metal Buffalo.
Yeah, he actually goes, God, that's JJ goes, God, that's cool. I go, don't even think about it, JJ. I am not doing Heavy Metal Buffalo in the World Wrestling Federation.
You ended up in the Gimmick Battle Royal on Sunday.
Yeah. So anyway, it all started there. I started playing, and Bill Watts saw it, and I sent him a tape. And
Bill Watts?
Yep. Rip Rogers.
Oh my God.
Saw my matches. Bill Watts and I had already talked actually once before. He liked the amateur background thing.
Sure.
But
yeah,
he dug, man, believe it or not, he dug the guitar thought process.
Mm.
And so from that day forward, once I got into WCW as Max Payne, they did the Norma Jean's Blues thing. I did a music video right at the very first. And, Dusty tried, but Dusty just, Bill left, Dusty tried, then nobody ever gave a crap. And, that was sort of the size of it. So, yeah, the band thing all started back that long ago. And from that moment forward, once I got out of the WCW, from the time I met with Vince, my goal was merely to be the support structure for Brian, to be the band background, Monday Night Raw mentality. I would love to have been a Monday Night Raw band, or whatever.
They tried that with Michael Hayes once.
Yeah.
The Raw band. Remember that for a little while?
Did they?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I never even got an opportunity to try. So I did one time, and it was absolutely the worst night of my life. Dave actually made intense fun of me that night. The night with Bob Backlund.
Oh, God.
Absolutely the worst. You can't, whatever you wrote about me in that one, Dave, thumbs up to you, because I felt 50 times worse than you wrote about me. I guarantee you. First of all, they put me in the Madison Square Garden with a PA system out of a bar. I've got a monitor system from a bar with a guy who runs it in the bar. I'm like, this is Madison Square Garden, and you want me to play with the system you use in a bar from 20 feet away? It was really the worst equipment I'd ever seen in my life. And, I inside me, everything in my bones was raging, don't do this. Then they wanted me to job for Bob, and I didn't mind that. That part of the business doesn't bug me at all. But just the whole music thing was so wrong. I really wanted to just say no. And I begged Vince after that show. I said, Vince, I'm begging you, if we're going to do this, please, it has to be done, by pros, by the top AV people in the world, or it's going to fail and fail horribly. And I guess the rest sort of speaks for itself.
Mm.
In
WCW, I guess I don't know if you consider these your most memorable matches, but I think most people consider your most memorable matches with the Cactus Jack against the Nasty Boys. We were doing that program. It was like I guess it would be like what hardcore wrestling is now, but then it was actually kind of a novelty, especially on pay-per-view. The matches that you guys had, and was that the highlight of your career, or what would you consider the highlight of your career?
Well, I kind of have mixed emotions about the Nasty thing, because I learned a lot from them in the sense of how to be an asshole. Because if you're not with them, they will just, take such hardcore advantage of you that, if you don't protect yourself, they don't care whether they hurt you or not. So from one sense, I got beat up probably worse than I ever did, because they were just such horribly sloppy wrestlers that they would just hurt you and, oh, was that stiff, brother? Well, the fact that I have no teeth now, should probably indicate that you may have been just a little stiff on the knee, big boy. But no, there were several times that they rendered me unconscious, dropping knees on my forehead and smashed me into the turnpost and, I actually lost the feeling in the whole entire side of my face one night after working with them, because they trapped my arms, then ran my head into the post. Looking back in retrospect, I'm absolutely convinced that was intentional, I mean, but, at some point you still hope that people have enough respect to protect you. And the Nasty Boys, you always wondered about them. But we sure had some moments. I have to say, in terms of whether they were the sort of pinnacle of my career, I guess I don't really have much of a choice but to say yes, because, it was really the last big thing and the only big thing, and not the only. I think the Johnny B. Bad thing was something, but they were certainly the highlight of my career and between WCW and WWF, that's for sure. I have real mixed emotions about that. Really
now, what? Explain. I mean, I remember this is really vague, but you and Cactus Jack were a team, and then I don't know if this affected him, and I don't know if it affected you, but there was a segment on a television show, and I don't remember the show anymore, where they were talking about Missy Hyatt's lawsuit. And I think they came up to both of you.
I was there on that one.
Okay.
That was after that match, actually.
Okay.
That was actually after the match. We were walking back to the, Super 8 motel that's across the parking lot, or the Hotel 6, I don't know, it's one of the cheap ones, across the parking lot from the United Center. And, of course, he and I, trying to save money, we certainly didn't, drive there. He assured me that it was much easier just to walk there than try to drive the car there. And, I realized how nice it would have been to sit in a car after the match with the Nasty Boys, just to get back to the hotel. But we're walking out of the arena. Before we go to there, I think I have to precede this with something, because there was a moment in that match that evening that I'm sure that we all felt that. I'm not sure even the audience realized, and I felt it was a precedent-setting moment for me. I was absolutely probably the biggest night of my life. And especially after I saw the movie Gladiator, just, recently, there was a moment in that match where the audience was so prepared to accept death that it just scared the ever-loving crap right out of me. And I don't know if you know what I mean by that. I'm not trying to be, real dark here, or whatever you want to say. But there was a moment where things were getting, crazy enough that the crowd, would have easily accepted, a gladiator-type moment there. And everybody would have been abhorred, but by the same token, everybody would have watched it happen. And it was one of those moments where I went, this is a little bit over the edge, And I walked away from there with some very mixed feelings about the match. And I know Cactus did, because I watched him cough up part of his, lung, and God knows what other, parts of his internal organs was in, what he coughed up. But when we walked out of there, I certainly wasn't feeling like I was on cloud nine, even though nobody ever sat down that whole match. And then he did the interview with Missy, and he and I had a lot of conversations, up till then. It was it was an interesting moment. I wish I could find the exact words to describe how I felt, how he felt, when we went back to the hotel. But we sat there for a while and didn't say much. Like I said, it was an interesting night, all in all. And Cactus actually said, "Yeah, I hope Missy gets a bunch of money out of Ted." And
yeah, that was
got a bunch of press over that. I'm in the background going, "Cactus, shut up."
That was the beginning of the end for him in that company.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It didn't help me much either.
I know probably it would have been a lot better for your career to actually work with Cactus instead of teaming with him. But what did you?
I wouldn't have wanted to do that either. I worked with him, and we were the wrong people to put together as oppositions. We really were. It was much better as a tag team. The Office, the Office was just scared of our tag team. They really were. I remember Bill Dundee said, "I don't get it. I don't get how two fat, ugly sons of bitches like you can get over." And I'm like, dude, why does that just abhor you so much? Twinkie eaters need a hero. People who eat pizza and watch wrestling, they need a hero because, not all of them look like The Rock, or Stone Cold. There's got to be the fat guy identification thing out there somewhere, And it just killed him that fat guys could get over.
Mm-hmm. What was it between the two of you that didn't work out as far as having matches?
I didn't enjoy, I don't know what it was. I mean, we had a couple matches in England, and they were okay, but they were nothing to write home to Mom about. And it was just one of those things where I much preferred the shtick we did as partners, you know? Mm-hmm. I much preferred the interviews as partners, you know? I think it was kind of a, you know, a nice sort of scenario. It was a nice balance with Mick and I. And I enjoyed my time with Mick, I have to say. I really did.
Now, the last tour that you were with the WWF, you brought your video camera. And what's the story on all that?
Well, for some reason, I'm really not quite sure what the reason I took my video camera with me was. I've always wanted to be a filmmaker. And for some reason, I didn't know it was my last tour. So looking back in retrospect, you know, it even seems more miraculous that I took the dang thing with me, because I certainly, and after you see the whole movie, and you see what, I mean, you actually already hear sort of what I say towards the end of the movie anyway, which is, oh yeah, I'm going to be doing this again tomorrow. And, you know, that was at the last thing I said on the videotape was, oh yeah, I can't wait to go to work tomorrow, basically, and I was done. So, you know, it was really a tough moment in time, because here I am thinking that things are going great, and I've got this movie in my back pocket now. So I take my video camera and do this movie on this last tour, and I don't know why I took it, don't know why I shot it. Certainly wasn't easy, you know, doing what I did, but I sort of it's funny because I didn't even realize I had it till almost a year and a half ago, and I knew I had it, but I never really sat down and looked at it. But I realized how complete it was, and it's got some incredible things on it. I think anyway. I think there's some moments that no wrestling fan has ever seen, and knowing the wrestling business, I'm sure that Vince would never, you know, show you the moments the way I've showed them, just simply because it takes away a little bit from the control factor. But this is just a moment with basically a guy that took his camera on the road, and it was amazing how candid everybody was. You know, nobody even hesitated a second, being candid on camera and being themselves. And so it really, I think it's a very interesting piece of film. And so I shot this movie, and anybody who wants to see a trailer of it, you can go to my website at maxpayne.com, and there's 3 levels of download there, and you can see the preview to The Thing That Should Not Be, which is a 3.5 hour, an hour and a half is probably what it'll end up being, an hour and a half movie of life on a road with a wrestler, and a wrestler who didn't make it, who tried desperately to make it and thought he was making it, and by the crowd's response, you'd hope that he'd make it, but for whatever reason, I didn't make it. So that's what turned out.
How close do you follow wrestling these days?
The closest, you know, I've got a couple friends still in the, well, I should say one friend that contacts me, you know, we stay in contact. I don't know much about it, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I know who the stars are. I know what the people that I care about that, you know, I still feel like I have some contact with. I know what they're doing. I pay enough attention to you know what they're doing. But, you know, I'm certainly not partly because I don't have the time. You know, I actually do kind of enjoy watching it and seeing people like Chris, you know, finally arise to the top and so on and so forth. But I don't watch wrestling very much.
Now, you know, as someone who was in wrestling, and wrestling has changed, you know, you haven't been out of it that long, yet it's an entirely different business in many ways. You know, I mean, like just we talked about, you know, Peter William and Otto Vance. I mean, they basically, you know, that CWA doesn't exist.
Yep.
WCW doesn't exist.
Oh my God.
You know, I mean, it's like, I mean, it's really turned into a very. I mean, what are your thoughts as far as if you were a wrestler or just knowing what you know about wrestling? The idea that, certainly in North America, it's a one-man show right now.
Well, and I think you may underestimate the power of Vince there almost a little bit, in the sense that, really, when you look at the World Wrestling Federation and you look at what the business is, we're talking about a business who claims great power worldwide. I would almost suggest to anybody listening, I mean, think about the reality of it all, is what would the NFL do in India, and what does the WWF do in India? There's certainly, you can certainly go, they're going to draw an audience in India, because if they've got television there, people will come and see them, and it goes that way around the world. I mean, they'll sell out shows, especially when the business is good. I don't know how they're doing right now in Europe, but I would.
They would do well, but they don't even have to go because their business is so strong here.
It's so
now.
good at home. Exactly my point. So now you got the rest of the world watching his TV and hungry. You might have to question whether he's not bigger worldwide than anything else that America has to offer. And I would say, this is where I'm going to go out on the limb. And Vince is, I'm sure, if he should ever hear me say this, would cringe at the thought of this. But I would say the timing couldn't be more perfect. What needs to happen in the business? I thought it then. I think it now. I think the boys need representation. I've always believed in a union, partly because I came from a union family, and I saw how the union protected my father in the steel mill, and looked after my family. So from a union standpoint, I'm certainly, I think union. I'm not sure a classic union would work in the wrestling business. I'm not sure it's the perfect answer. But I sure think that
nothing's perfect. There's flaws in every system. Yeah,
absolutely. Nothing's perfect, but I sure think I think, and you know what? I'm going to go out on a further limb. I think AFTRA and what part of the Screen Actors Guild could protect the boys if wrestling is entertainment. I almost have to say to the unions of the television and performers, shame on you for not protecting those who can't protect themselves. And I'm certainly not talking about the top guys in the WWF, as in any other sport. When you form a union, you look out to protect the guys who are the supporting cast that, give you an hour and 25 minutes before you come out and are the star, and so I think the union concept is a concept that I pitch just simply and I've always pitched it, and quite frankly, it's probably one of the reasons that I'm blackballed in the wrestling business. But I really believe that a union is a must. And the sad part is none of the boys will do it, because by the time somebody says, hey, let's start a union, and they all go, yeah, by the time you get to the door, there won't be anybody behind you.
There's one guy.
Yeah, there'll be one guy standing there going,
and Vince,
we want to do a union.
So
it's going to take a guy like me who's not in the business anymore to say, hey, Vince, I challenge you to expose the salaries and Rock, I'm doing you a favor right now, and Stone Cold, because I'm convinced after I do this interview I'll never go back to the business anyway. So, I've been quiet up till now, not really. I say I challenge you, Vince, to show your salaries in comparison to the other great athletes in the United States. And,
compared to baseball players, I just looked at those baseball salaries last night on ESPN. That was pretty scary.
There's not one guy on the list from the WWF. Why?
Of the top probably 100 athletes, I bet there's not because there's so many baseball players that make so ungodly amount of money.
But here's the thing, though, you got to ask yourself. Think about baseball. How many baseball players are there in the United States? Now Vince just whittled it down to where there's 20 guys in the wrestling world making money.
Well, there's a little more than 20, but there's less than 100.
But the real money.
Yeah, real money.
Top players.
If you're talking about $1 million, there's a handful.
That's exactly my point. And don't you think that? I think that's a little ironic, considering these guys are doing 300 days a year on the road. They work harder than anybody else, or filling houses all over the United States, and yet they're not in the top 100 of paid
for the revenue they generate as compared to golfers, baseball players, football players. They're not even in the same league.
Not even in the ballpark, brother.
For the revenue they generate. Yeah, we talk about that all the time. Football players, basketball players will get 50% of the revenue of that sport, and wrestlers get 12%.
So I challenge the president of AFTRA to say, hey, what's going on here? These guys need protection. That's the bottom line. Somebody somebody needs to look after him, and somebody that's smart to the business and can't be shoved around by Vince.
And let's head to the phone calls. We're going to start with Charles. Charles, how are you tonight?
Hey, how you doing, Dave? Max,
Doing very
Brian.
good.
Hey.
Max, I actually enjoyed your character in WCW. I liked the Painkiller. I thought it was
Thanks, man.
pretty over submission. And I disagree with you. I would like to have seen you and Cactus you and Mick work a program.
It may have been, you know what? It may have been good. I certainly, I just know I had so much fun with him as a partner that, you know what? You're probably right. Anything could have gone between Mick and I. There's no question about it.
Yeah,
it would have been fun.
And like I said, I really enjoyed your transition into that Painkiller. It looked like it was killing the guy, and I guess it was a pretty safe move. So
I'll tell you a funny story about that. One night we were in Alabama, and I was working. They put me out against a job guy, and if this kid's listening, I'll apologize to him again before I tell this story. He come in and, they brought him in the room. We were talking about, the finish and stuff. And I said, okay, I'm going to do the Painkiller. And I said, no problem. And he kind of looked at me a little funny. He said, yeah, no problem. We'll do it. Right. So we went out and, we did something else prior to the Painkiller. I don't remember exactly what it was, some kind of a slam or a tackle. And when he lit on his shoulder funny. He took a bad bump. And I think he was trying to do a 360 or something. And he took a bad bump and lit on his shoulder and dislocated his shoulder.
Oh, my God.
But he didn't smart me up to the fact that he'd hurt himself. So I put him in a Painkiller and reset it.
Oh, my God.
And we got out of the ring, man. I felt so bad. He goes, dude, my shoulder was dislocated. I said, well, why didn't you tell me? I'd have thrown you out of the ring or something, Because, bam, I put him in the Painkiller. But, hey, I saved him the money,
Yeah,
saved him the money going to the doctor, so.
The move actually had chiropractic propriety as well.
That's
outstanding. Hey, Dave.
Yes.
I guess. Well, let me run a few things by you on this WCW WWF thing. I think they started it off smart by the McMahons are kind of the stars of their company, so pitting Vince against Shane and turning WCW face. I think that was a good move. But as far as the TV spots that they're considering, I don't know. The more I think about it, I don't see it being able to work unless you really continue to build this thing up as something major that at some point is going to lead to Shane taking over SmackDown and maybe getting The Rock or something. Otherwise, it's not gonna. It's not a consistent gimmick. You know what I mean?
Oh no, they need to. The problem is that you need two relatively equal in power sides to have a good feud.
Exactly.
And right now, the 24 guys that they have signed from WCW, I mean, the biggest stars are Lance Storm and Mike Awesome. That's not enough star power. So they got to send guys, and they can't send Billy Gunn and Test and think that that's the answer, because then that'll only make it worse. Well, they got to have. I mean, The Rock or Triple H, one of those two's got to be there, or you're really going to have problems.
I agree with you 100%. Without,
I think Jericho's all right.
No. I mean, there's nothing wrong with sending Jericho, but he can't be the number one guy either.
Yeah, you probably should send the Radicals back in because they have an association with the company, but you ultimately are going to have to send one of your top guys. It would have to either be, I would have said Hunter and the entire clique before this latest Shawn Michaels incident, but now I'm leaning towards probably The Rock being the guy that you got to send.
I think from a scheduling standpoint, The Rock is better. I mean, there's nothing wrong with sending Benoit and some of those guys. I would almost rather not send the guys that were there before, because then it just looks sort of like, you know what I mean? It's like they've already been there. They've already wrestled a lot of those guys.
So nothing unique about it.
Yeah, I would rather elevate those guys within the WWF structure and send guys over there that have never been there before. So at least that way you have some, a unique environment for them. And plus, the one thing is, if The Rock is there, that's their best shot at doing ratings from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. If they send, say just Benoit or somebody like that, the average WWF fan isn't going to watch another show. If it becomes SmackDown, not SmackDown, it becomes like Heat or Jacked or something like that, and the Heat ratings right now in prime time are not very good. And I mean, there's your answer right there. Is Heat is doing between a 1.5 and a 2, 1.6 to a 2 generally most weeks. I think they did 2.2 a week ago. But I mean, in that range. And for this thing to be successful, it's got to do better than that in a worse time slot. So you've got to have more star power than you got on Heat. And,
I'm thinking I'm thinking in order for it to work, Dave, it's gonna have to be the second show. They're gonna have to give them a WCW SmackDown. And
That's not going to happen right away.
You mean a second WCW show, or have SmackDown turn into?
No. Have
WCW
SmackDown become WCW?
Exactly, as part of the storyline.
Ultimately, you're right, Charles.
The SmackDown show.
If they do some gimmick where in September one side, they get SmackDown, then you have a real chance at a money feud at that point.
And I'm thinking
they're like they have equal team TV.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be best for the writers too, because then you can just concentrate on the two major shows, and it looks like an equal feud at that point. And I'm thinking storyline-wise, it even has to get to the point where it's going to look like WCW may win, and then you'd have to introduce the third element to turn on Shane, forcing Shane to side back with the WWF, thus turning the main company face again.
You know, the other thing about what you said, which actually I really like that idea, and you can't do it right away, but at some point, it also, I think, will help each individual show. It'll help Raw, because all of a sudden those other guys, you can only see them once a week. One of the problems I think that there is now is that you see everyone twice a week. So, if you miss, it makes it more easy to miss a show right now.
I agree.
Plus, there's so many replays, you can miss a show.
And not only that, I think you're looking at a problem of tremendous overexposure of the product, because if you think about it now, even though it is less wrestling to watch a week per se, it's more of the exact same product.
It's more of the same wrestling, so that's right. So it's overexposure of the product, not the product wrestling, but the product WWF. Yeah,
exactly. So I'm thinking ultimately it's going to have to come down to between those two shows. WWF keeps Raw, and Shane somehow finagles his father out of the SmackDown contract, and he takes over, makes a WCW SmackDown, and he gets the Rock contract or something like that. And in fact, you're almost going to have to do that if the WCW superstars are going to sit this thing out.
Yeah, but WCW gets Raw.
Oh, either way.
That would be interesting.
There's nothing wrong with that. Even better. It's the same premise.
I mean, SmackDown, I think that overall the rating is probably a little higher for SmackDown, and it's the, it's the broadcast show. But, Raw has the name. That's been the show since day one, or whatever, since the war started, so give them that one.
It would be viewed as a bigger coup to take Raw in the story.
Yeah, and it really wouldn't be. Yeah. But to the fans, it would be.
Yeah, exactly. Which is going to make the story more interesting. Yeah, I would agree with all of that. Dave, has there been any more word of where any of the top guys, like Flair and some of the others, stand on this thing?
Flair's got 2 years left on a contract that pays $800,000 a year. And that is a lot to turn away. I would say, and I'm sure I'll know more about this one certainly by Monday. But I think that the odds of Flair going there are less than 50%. I can tell you right now they're way less than 50%. I mean, they may, again, if Vince wants anybody bad enough, he's going to get them. Yeah. It's just a question of how bad he wants them. But, Flair going there, from what I understand the facts to be, the odds are a lot less than I thought they were yesterday. Put it that way.
Dave, you're Vince McMahon. Who's the key guy that you really go after?
I'm never going to be Vince McMahon.
Well, just hypothetically speaking, who's the key guy that you go after to break this whole thing open and kind of make everybody else?
You certainly got to make a hell of an offer for Goldberg, because it's the match the fans want. We heard it all week. The emails I get is Steve Austin, Bill Goldberg is the match that everybody wants, and that's why, to me, putting Gilbert in the Battle Royal or mentioning Bill Goldberg on TV, unless you're going to get him, you don't want everyone dreaming for this one match. We can't wait for this match that you're not going to deliver. It's totally counterproductive.
Yeah. Well,
how does this whole contract thing work as far as, what does Turner have? Do they have the ability to keep him off even sitting in the front row? Is it just wrestling? What is it?
Well, I mean, theoretically exclusive. I mean, the whole thing is that you can't put someone on there when they have an existing contract with someone else. And, Turner, these guys would rather sit and collect their Turner money because it's guaranteed or Time Warner money, as opposed to going on the road, you're going on the road and making less money. It makes no sense. Mm-hmm. Than to sit at home and collect it. There are those 10 guys, whoever they are. But those are the 10 top guys for them, not quite 10 top guys, but for the most part, they're the top 4 guys.
Another thing with the WWF, though, is you have to factor in, the mainstream exposure. I mean, if Rock were making $1 million in WCW, let's just say he was a WCW guy, and this whole thing happened, and he was making, say, $2 million a year, and it was up to him to decide whether he was going to go to WWF for, a $400,000 downside, or keep his $2 million a year. I mean, what he's gotten in WWF is he's become a huge star. He's got movie deals, a book that just did huge. And, can Goldberg get that? Can he get a movie deal? Can he get, a book deal? I mean, he's booked it okay.
He's already done the book. The movies, he'll either get it or he won't. But yeah, you're right. There's upsides. There's upsides to going, but the difference between $2 million a year and $400,000 a year, I don't know if that's. And then you're risking that you're going to make another $1.6 million, plus you're going to be out on the road all those days as opposed to not being on the road. I mean, they're all factors to take into consideration.
Well, I tell you this, the WWF promotional vehicle is still very strong, so there is potential for those guys to recoup a lot of that money. And, the factor of your face not being on TV for a while, does that drive your value up or bring it down?
We don't know because we don't know what the marketplace is going to be. 3 years from now, it may drive your value up because they're going to need somebody big, and there you are out there as a free agent, or the business may be through the roof and everyone may have just forgotten who you were. Although, you know what, guys?
Just ask Daryl what he would have done.
What? Yeah, Daryl, yeah. What's that? Yeah. What, in a situation, let's put you in the Bill Goldberg situation, okay?
Yeah.
You got basically 2.5 years, at let's say $2.5 million a year, to sit at home, or you have a chance to go to the WWF with let's just say your guarantee's $500,000 a year, but you can make it up theoretically. I mean, if you're in the main event at WrestleMania, you might even be able to make the same amount of money. But you're going on the road, you're 250 days a year. What would you want, and what would you be thinking as far as making that decision?
Well, I'm probably not the perfect guy to ask that in the sense that, for me, it's an easy decision. I'd stay home with my family. I mean, if you're guaranteed that kind of money at some point, that's a lot of money,
It's a lot of money.
And not have to do anything. I mean, if he's obviously been content to be off the air right. How long has he been off right now?
He was off in January. They did the loser or the loser must retire match. In January.
Everybody wants to see it. There's no question about it. Will it still be alive in 2.5 years? What do you guys think? If he just took the money and sat at home for 2.5 years, is that the question?
The question is, do you take the money, or do you go back on the road, or do you go on the road and figure that,
it's not even, the road's hard. And if you get $2.5 million for sitting at home, buy a case of, Jolly Time and hang 10 and watch movies and watch your kids grow up for 2.5 years and enjoy life.
Yeah, plus
because
the other thing
is still going to be around. You'll be healthy. You work out every day. Everything will be great. So I would just say stay home and take the money.
Dave, I just have two more things. Does Turner Time Warner have any type of negotiation leverage at all on these contracts, or are they just set in stone?
In what sense? You mean as far as not paying them?
Yeah, or getting them to renegotiate the contract and settle.
Well, they can try to buy them out, but the other guy has to agree to it, or they can try to find a breach somewhere. But these guys, I tell you what, in that situation,
what can they be breaching right now?
Well, they better try
not being at home.
Well, let me ask you this: Can they, since technically they're still employees, can they say, well, if we're going to pay you, you guys have to come do some type of work for us?
No, only if it's wrestling, because they're wrestling contracts, not employee contracts. So yeah, if they were to open up a wrestling company, they could, which they can't do because I'm sure they're signing a non-compete. Because they're not getting $10 million or whatever it is from Vince, and then reopening next week. So it's basically
So is that the deal? $10 million?
What? 10 to 20, somewhere in that range is what's been. I don't know the exact number.
WCW?
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Does he have to honor the contracts too, or does somebody else honor?
No. He bought the contracts he wants. He bought 24 contracts, which were all the lower paid guys. He didn't buy any of the top guys' contracts, so he doesn't have to honor any of them. Turner has to take care of the contracts.
What incentive would any of these guys have to go work for somebody else if they did open up a
That's
company?
nothing.
The incentive is if they just want to be in the spotlight or not. And the thing is also with some of these guys, you got to look at. And Goldberg doesn't fit into this one because he's relatively young. He's 34. But like with Page, and certainly with Flair, you're talking about guys, Page is in his mid-40s, Flair's 52, that, it's like with Flair.
They better hope they save their money well.
Yeah, but the thing with Flair, okay, like he's got 2 years at $800,000. Now you can go in there and go, you know what? Maybe he can make almost as much with Vince. But you know what? It's like he's got to make that much and more because you're talking about road expenses as well that he would have. And at 54, it's like he's not going to have a third year at 54 to make up, let's say, what he didn't make in these 2 years. So for his family, unless Vince is going to offer...
when Flair was 40, though.
Oh, come on. He's not going to be wrestling when he's 54. He's barely wrestling now. But, unless... the whole thing is, I think for most of these guys, is they're going to have to get an offer pretty darn close to what they're making, or why turn it down? Unless...
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I don't see... Booker's going to go, but I don't know... and Steiner, the thing with Steiner is Steiner doesn't need to wrestle. I think he does it because he wants to, or whatever the thing motivates him. I'm talking about Scott. Because Scott's already got his money, but, again, there's just whatever different things motivate you. But, if you're in your mid-40s and you've got this kind of money coming in, it's pretty stupid to walk away from it and just for the ego rush of working for the WWF, I think.
Yeah.
And yet some of them probably will, though. Well, Dave, thank you. And I wanted to thank you personally again for your help earlier in the week. And believe me, we will continue to bend your ear on getting advice on this FMLL thing.
Okay, and just let us know how the shows are going and when you get lineups and things like that. We can always promote them and stuff.
Yeah, we're going to do something the day after Cinco de Mayo. We're actually getting some sponsorship from a radio station, so we're going to run 2 shows simultaneously on that day, and we'll split the main event. We'll split the crew, and we'll have the main event at the top of both shows, and those are going to be free. So, we're expecting huge turnouts for those.
Okay, cool.
Okay, guys, thank you very much, and thanks, Matt and Brian.
The Bobby Heenan thing and Gene Okerlund thing is a one-time thing, at least for now. They're just doing it for the one match. They're not signed to go full-time with the WWF. I guess it's a possibility that they could be the announcers on the WCW show. Those decisions have not been made yet, though. But
I don't know if I would do both of them together on that show. I'd like to split them up. If they're going to use both of them, maybe.
Well, they could always use Gene to do the interviews and have Heenan do the color and then get a play-by-play guy.
Put someone with Heenan.
Yeah, there are possibilities. Man, it's a possibility. I don't know. It's one of the things.
They haven't announced Lawler at Access yet.
He's not there. I think Lawler. Well, let's see. Any word on how long Benoit and Angle will be given? I'd say 15 minutes, roughly. I got a feeling. It could be a little more or a little less. They should get an hour. No one's getting an hour, I don't think. Brock and Austin may get a long time. They do got 4 hours to fill. Let's see. This is from someone who goes, about the WWF in being big in Europe. There's no WWF in all of Scandinavia, and Germany no longer shows Raw or SmackDown. The only countries that are going to be showing WrestleMania are the UK live and France on a tape delay. So they're really... So they don't have German TV. No wonder we get so much feedback on the website from England. The countries we get the big feedback on, besides the United States and Canada, it's really England, very little Australia, and a decent amount Japan. Is that pretty much it? Do you get feedback from other places, Brian?
That's pretty much it.
England far more than any other country, except for United States and Canada. Let's go. I
think we got a lot of India for a while there.
India?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't remember anything from there. A little bit in other countries too. Let's go to Chris. What's going on?
Hi, how's it going?
It's going pretty good.
I was looking at I downloaded that preview while I was actually on hold and watched the preview of the movie that he was talking about. Mm-hmm. When is that going to be available, or is it available now to buy? Or?
Well, I actually just kind of put the preview together to see what kind of response, how much interest it generated, and I've got it. I'm going to set my goal of having it ready to go within 4 to 6 weeks. The completed the whole movie package and everything, because one of my problems, the only thing that's got me stopped up right now is music production, because I'm producing all the music on that movie as well. The band that the song I used on there is one of the bands I produced, and then we've got 4 or 5 other bands, as well as my own music is on the movie, and that's the only thing that's holding me up right now.
Okay.
Do you think there'd be legal problems with the WWF?
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Well, I'm sure there will be. I'm sort of geared up for that, The reality of it is I would love to talk to Vince about this, because quite frankly, it's something that has to be seen. I think it's a great story, not just because I'm in it, I just think I think it's a hell of a look that nobody's ever seen, and I think it can do a lot for the business. I think there's some bad things, but I also think there's some incredible things.
I think he's going to be a little bit leery after the last couple of years of
he's not good about movies. I mean, every one of those movies has resulted in some sort of an attempt to either sabotage or lawsuits.
Well, and of course, because he can't control that environment. But the one thing about I'll just say this is there's always the Tommy Lee and Pamela thing. Once it gets out, there's nothing that can be done. So,
how about if
I'm at a point where I think it's such a cool deal that if I have to, I'll give it away.
Now, if Vince came to you and said, "Look, I don't want this thing getting out. I'll give you $5 million for this movie,"
well,
so of course
he would
would
take the $5 million.
destroy it.
Silly.
Well,
silly.
The funny part about me, guys, and I know you're gonna think, Max, shut up, this is crazy. The reality for me is, man, I tell you from the bottom of my heart, I'm a musical guy. I mean, I love to make music. I've spent my whole life wanting to do it. It really was the disjointed thing for me when I was doing wrestling. I always dreamed about doing music, and I'm going to do music. And I'll tell you what, I've got a circle of the most incredibly talented young musicians around me right now you can imagine. And $5 million right now would put all of these young acts and would really ensure for me. And really all I want out of this is the ability to promote my own products. I really do. I want to help the bands that I work with. There's some really incredible talent out here where I live. And I really just want to be somebody that turns around and invests that money in other young talent and just do music the rest of my life. I know that sounds, rather simple, but that's the reality of it all. That's my goal in life, is to do music the rest of my life. So, I don't care about the money, though. I think, in the one sense, I mean, that would be nice to have that, but I think this movie will land me all kinds of other things just simply because it's one of those things that when you see it, it's pretty fascinating take, and it was all orchestrated basically by me.
Yeah,
that's not an ego thing. I'm just saying I just had the wherewithal to take my camera with me and have created a really cool documentary of what it's like to be on the road as a wrestler. And quite frankly, I think the world needs to see that.
Just from the preview, I saw it, and I was just like, I was hooked to it. I just wanted to see the whole thing. So
that makes you feel really good. Well, then you know what, man? With people like you that are out there, if the emails and the responses I get are like that, it's going to be a difficult. I don't know what I'd do. I really, if Vince said, here's the money, take it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I'd do. It's one of those deals where.
Well, I wouldn't blame you for taking it. I mean,
well,
there's a lot of super fans out there that
But he's not gonna offer it though.
Oh no, I know. I'm just saying.
No, he's not going to do that. That's for sure not. That's not Vince's style. And the reality of it all is, I'm sure. I'm pretty confident that I'll be hearing from his legal staff.
Well, how much like does Vince hold over that as far as
I don't know.
on property, or is it because
to me they have no claim. I'll just be honest with you, because first of all, when you see the whole thing, you'll know I'm telling you the truth. The agents knew I was doing it. I got them telling jokes on camera.
Yeah, you can see the look on everybody's face.
It's not like nobody knew that I wasn't taking video. They didn't have to participate. They could have said, turn that off, I don't want to be involved. But nobody did. Everybody was involved.
Right.
And therefore, they knew I had a camera. When I took it into the ring, I'm not exploiting the interior wrestling characters, and it's not really an exploitation. It's merely a look that the wrestling business is not going to allow you to look at. That they don't want you to see. They don't want you to see this kind of a movie.
I think if everybody just knowing how well Beyond the Mat and everything did, just especially for the inside fans and the internet type fans, if they caught a look at that movie, they would absolutely you'd have a definite interest in that. I don't have any question about it.
My goal is, to be quite honest with you, I'll tell you where I want to go with this, because it is a two-level story. It's not just about behind the wrestling scenes. It's also about somebody who, took it right to the edge, man. I went right to the edge of the wrestling business and, could have had it all, but didn't make it. I'm the underdog, man. I'm the guy that, was right there tasting it all and involved in it all, and for whatever reason, I didn't make it, and I think that's an incredible story for people to just sit down and look at.
As far as did you have any? As far as the upper guys, did you get along with everybody? As far as the boys go, did you have any pop? You know, like the political
Well, I'm pretty
problems?
confident that the reason that I didn't go any further was because of Kevin Nash and Scott Hall.
I was going to add. Okay.
Oh my God! I never heard that before.
That is a shocker.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, I know that's hard to believe, isn't it? But you know, when you see the
That's
tape,
almost shocking as Brian Adams being lazy.
Gosh, I just keep going.
We've got some revelations on this
Maybe
show
I can
today.
give you some revelations. Now, you know, it's just one of those things where, you know, I can't tell you how many times I heard, do you honestly believe a fat, ugly guy can get over? And I went,
Do you remember my favorite Kevin Nash was the day, it was the day that, I think it was the day he pushed that finger into Hulk Hogan. And they were all laughing, and he lost the world title to Hulk Hogan. And they were all laughing because WWF had just made Foley world champion. And he just goes, doesn't Vince realize that unless, you know, like, to be the world champion, you've got to be someone that all the guys want to be like and all the girls want to be with. And I'm just thinking, and that's why Mick Foley was going to be a big disaster.
You got to have the word
champion.
Mark tattooed on your forehead, too. My God, Kevin. Wow.
I guess he just doesn't realize that there's people out there that appreciate guys like Foley and guys that work hard, and
well,
I mean, that's just...
I think Foley turned out to be a pretty big star, but it was like, the other one, and Brian, you probably heard this one a lot, was the people don't recognize them at the airport. Not recognize, but when you walk in an airport, you know, that was the old reason why they always wanted to push. You remember Van Hammer, of course, right, Max?
Oh, my God, do I remember Van Hammer?
Because Van Hammer, we know a big muscular guy, and when, you know, you see a big muscular guy in the airport, you kind of do a double take. And it's like, see, people recognize him at the airport, whereas like some guy like Juventud Guerrero, who has more, you know, ability in his pinky, you know, it's just, you know, he's a normal-sized guy, so, you know, it's like, but what does that matter? We're not at airports. Like, that's not, the game isn't how many people
when you start running shows at airports.
Yeah. You know, and I'll be honest with you, it never bummed me out not to be noticed in an airport, you know, because an airport's not some place that you go, boy, here's a great place for a photo op, you know. It's like, for the love of God, I'm trying to get on a plane and get to my next destination, you know, come to the arena or whatever, you know. I mean, it's one of those times in your life where you want to just be as much like everybody else as you can, so, you know. That's crazy.
Okay.
Did you ever see Wrestling with Shadows or Beyond the Mat?
I did.
What'd you think?
I saw the one with Brett.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear my honest opinion, or do you want me to
No, we only want honest opinions.
You know, I got to tell you, I was totally offended. I'm just going to tell you my gut instinct on this.
Okay.
Because I'm a wrestler, and I know Bret Hart, and I know that if what happened, I based it on this, just knowing the business. If Vince McMahon came to ringside after he'd screwed me in a shoot, for real, and stole my title, and Sean and him were in cahoots, I would have, and in my hometown, in front of my home people, I guarantee you, I would have beat his ass right in front of everybody.
Well, he did it in front of
four people. He spit on Vince McMahon from inside the ring, and I know Bret Hart well enough to know that right there was the whole part that when I went, this whole thing's a work.
It's not.
I really believe that whole thing was
seriously, no, I could tell. This is one of the things I actually can tell you for sure. It's not.
Well,
he did punch Vince McMahon later that night.
Well, you know what, Dave, you might be right, but I tell you, I watched it from, you know, I got a T-shirt on my website that says at least 180, and I watched it the first time, and I was right with you. Then I watched it again, and I went, oh my God, they swerved. I mean, because the reality of it is this is the only thing else I got to say. I'm not going to try and change anybody's opinion, but I guarantee you, whenever Vince McMahon has a camera on him, he's acting.
Vince is always acting. No doubt about that.
Vince was in that, and for him to show up with a black eye, the makeup was bad. I just didn't buy it. I didn't buy any of it. I thought it was.
Okay.
I thought it was.
No, the one thing I was going to say about that is, after that, there's a lot of reasons I can say this, but if they had pulled off an angle that great, and an angle that today, almost 3.5 years later, people still talk about, why didn't Bret ever go back to work for him and make money off the angle?
I think there's a lot of reasons.
Okay.
I think that, you know, I mean, you certainly, first of all, it couldn't have manifested itself because the worst possible scenario happened. Bret's brother died in the WWF. So there's no way he could go back. Even now, I really believe that it was a coup. But Brett, from a pride standpoint, I know if it was my brother, I certainly couldn't like Vince McMahon after that.
Yeah.
Especially the way, in my opinion, the way it was handled.
He didn't like him before that. I mean, after that,
I think
the
you're
only
right,
thing
but
was
I
10 times
believe
worse.
Vince said,
Sure.
go get the money, and if you ever need a job, you can come back. Let's set up a good work so we can get you as much money as you possibly can have and turn you babyface in your hometown. I believe Vince has enough respect for the business and the boys to do that. I really do.
No, he wanted to kill him because he was afraid that what he was afraid of was that because Brett was so big in Canada at that time, and WCW was dead in Canada and still is, that all of a sudden it would open up this market that he had, and I think he wanted to take Brett down, and it ended up backfiring. Although WCW went and blew the opportunity.
It didn't totally kill Brett, though, I mean, as far as financially, because, I mean, he made a ton of money going over to WCW.
Brett made a ton of money. No, Brett made a ton of money with the WCW deal. WCW was the one who blew it with Brett. As far as, using
Dave, it's just hard for me to believe, man, when there's a camera around, you're not seeing real Vince. That's the best argument I have.
No,
if there's a camera on Vince McMahon, that's not real Vince McMahon.
There is no real Vince.
You know what? No,
You've been around Vince with no camera. It's still the same Vince.
I'll disagree with that in principle. I've sat with him in his office, and I've seen a real Vince. I've seen a different side of Vince, and I think the boys that have sat with him and have seen that, that side of Vince, there's something different when you sit with him in Titan and you're talking about, the nuance of a new character and, trying to develop and get going in the business with the WWF. I would have to say that's probably the closest to real Vince I ever saw. I never saw it again either. So
you know what's funny is the first time I saw Wrestling with Shadows, which was before it ever came out, when they sent me the preview, when it was over, my first reaction was, oh my God, anyone watching this that knows anything is going to think it's a work, and I knew it wasn't, and I go because it just fit so well.
Yeah,
it was just this weird thing. They had too much access.
Everything was perfect.
Everything was so perfect.
That's the part
like the Julie Hunter thing. I mean, that was so good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like but
I do know what you mean. I'll tell you why. Because when you watch my movie, I really believe people are going to think the same thing. Because there's some things that happen on camera, you're going to go, oh my God. You're just not going to. You're going to go, this is all BS.
I thought the funniest part of it in the preview was seeing Kevin Nash hold up that bag of money, and it was just kind of symbolic while he's just sitting there holding this clear bag of
I thought that was appropriate for this week, wasn't it? And then the handful of pills behind it. Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of hate mail from those guys.
Oh boy!
But from the Beak, I don't care about from Paul. I Triple H. I used to have respect for him, but I got to tell you, man, I was good. And Kevin Nash as well. I'll say this right out, and I'll face those punks anywhere. Because you know what, Kevin Nash, I was never anything but good to Kevin Nash. When I lived in Atlanta, I was always kind. I always respected him. He was under me, and I was nobody. You know what I mean? He was still doing nothing. He was kicking dirt clods when I was in Atlanta. And it's one of those things where I lived in the apartment building with him. I lived in the apartment building with Hogg and with Dennis Knight and, all those guys, and I was good to them. When Paul Levesque came to the WCW and did jobs as terrorizing, I used to intentionally sit with the job guys because I couldn't stand sitting in the ego room. Because the job guys were real, those guys were alive and came there and, oh my God, I can't wait to work. And even though it was putting somebody over, they knew that was their destiny. I had so much respect for them. And, I would watch those egos roll in every day and Kevin as well. And you know what? That's just not where I didn't want nothing to do with that kind of a lifestyle. And I'm sad looking back in retrospect how good I was to those guys. I thought they were my friends. I really did. And I've never heard from. I know, like I said, I know Kevin and Scott buried me. I know and that's one thing I want Vince to see in this movie is how over my gimmick was in Europe, because the people are popping. You can't deny what happens in this movie when you see the whole thing, that the people really dug it and had they really given me an opportunity to explore this thing. Give me a year, to really see what could come of the musical side. Things could have happened, but guys like Kevin, who I thought were my friends, went up there and I'm sure just did everything they could do to bury me. And I don't know why.
Do you think they just feared that gimmick could have worked, and they, just like any other case?
But what would you care? What would you care if it's going to make everybody money?
Oh no, I know what you're saying, but they've done that in WCW.
It very well could have been. It was hard for me to think like that because I always thought the deal was to try and fill the seats.
Yeah.
I'd figured out a long time ago it wasn't about the girls and the drugs and going up and down the road. The gimmick was to try and bring the fans out,
That's
and
the
fill
gimmick.
the seats.
It's not even the pops. It's the filling the seats. That's the business. That's right.
The deal. That's what you do. Your
it's
job
not getting recognized at the airports or anything else. Yeah.
And get them to come and put their butts in those seats, and then we'll take it from there. Vince doesn't have a problem getting it from there.
Well, that's what those guys did in WCW, though, over the last couple of years. That's one of the reasons.
They've all just stole livings. That's why. That's the danger of the union side right there.
Well, they put everybody down that had a chance of getting up. That's why I'm saying, as far as their logic should have been, let those guys come up so we have somebody to work with.
We have somebody new to work with in fresh matches.
Too. But they, once that click, I've heard you guys already use the click word. Once that thing's in place, if you're not a part of it, you're not a part of it. And in fairness to them, sometimes. I was just the kind of guy that would go overboard the other way to piss everybody off as much as I can because they pissed me off so bad. The bodybuilder guys, they all walked around looking in the mirror all day, and all they cared about was, the stuff to me that I was like, wait a minute. There's more to this than meets the eye. You're missing the bigger picture. And, they always looked down their nose at me, so therefore I could never be a part of that clique. So
Max, we actually got to go. We got to run because we're totally out of time. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to thank you very much for doing the show. I want to thank everyone for tuning in all week. And thanks Brian and Al and everybody else, all the callers. And we will be back Sunday night at midnight.